What is
Yo,
up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Fast Break Tundra Baller. This is the season finale of the semester, and I am here with a special guest with Carlos Zamudio. What is up, man?
hey, how you doing, bro? Good
Yep.
to be on the show. Good to be back, or not be back, but good to be on the show for the first time. Really looking forward to just talking about hoops. It's been going on this past week.
Yeah, man, you're talking all the way from Oregon. So, what are you doing there right now?
Yeah, I am majoring in broadcasting, or I'm majoring in journalism. I want to get into broadcasting. I've been here for the last 2 years now. Started in September of 2024, and I really want to get into sportscasting and satellite reporting for sports. So far, I've done a lot of good stuff up here. Um, you should check out my page, Carlos Z Media on Instagram. Yeah, I've been covering a lot of Oregon sports. I've been doing a lot of studio segments. Looking forward to doing more as I head into my senior year here at U of O.
There you go, and yeah, and we're pretty much trying to do the same thing. You know. I heard Oregon they have a lot of good stuff like Cal State Fullerton, and yes, I'm trying to do stuff for the Clippers. And is there any like teams that you would prefer one to cover, or pretty much any team?
Um, I mean, honestly, any team. Obviously, I would love to work for my favorite team, the Celtics, but I love going back home and maybe working for the Lakers or the Clippers, or maybe staying here and stay for the Portland Trailblazers. I understand that the NBA could come up to Seattle, so I would maybe love to work out for a future Seattle NBA team. But any NBA team would be great work. So. Yeah, hopefully in the future I could work for some NBA organization. Doesn't matter who it is, I'll
There
be
you
down
go.
for it. Yeah.
There you go. So for this episode today, we are going to be talking about we'll pretty much continue from what we talked about last time. We pretty much left off on the game fives of the game one series or the round one series. So we'll pretty much talk about the rest of those playoff games, and we'll talk about game two. But Carlos, do you want to talk about your favorite team, the Celtics, first before everything else? Like I saw the ending of Game Seven. Like I kind of feel bad. Like you guys were at 3-1. Yeah.
Yeah, obviously a very empty feeling right now for all my Celtics fans. Tough ending. Tough ending. Not the way how you wanted the season to end, especially to the hands of the hated rivals, the Philadelphia 76ers. Yeah, being up 3-1 and then blowing it was absolutely brutal. A lot of that factored into just Philly really using their depth. If you watched games 5 through game 7, their guard play was absolutely phenomenal. Uh, Obviously, Tyrese Maxey being one of the best point guards in not just the Eastern Conference but in the NBA. You know, his impact really was felt around those games, and also their guards played complementary to him. VJ Edgecombe, the rookie out of Baylor, he was amazing those last 3 games. Just watching the Celtics trying to guard him was, it felt like them trying to solve a Rubik's cube. Um, yeah, his aggression, always driving to the rim. He didn't even, his shooting from the perimeter wasn't even that strong, but obviously just his strength and the way he was driving to the basket alone caused a lot of problems for the Celtics because they didn't have any guys really to slow him down. Um, so yeah, their death really helped put the Sixers over the edge the last 3 games. And what really stood out to me in Game Five was just watching Quentin Grimes coming out of nowhere and just having the game of his life. Sending it back to Philly for Game Six, and then just taking control for most of that game. And then Game Seven, Game Seven was a really weird game. Philly got up to a really strong start, and then the Celtics came back, and it was a back and forth throughout most of the game. And then the fourth quarter, it looked like Philly was going to pull away, and then the Celtics went on a crazy run, down by Two, I want to say, with about 3 minutes left, they were up. The Sixers were up 103 to 101, and the Celtics had so many opportunities to try and take that lead in Game Seven. Jalen Brown missed two threes, two good looks, and Peyton Pritchard missed an open look in the corner. And what happened after that was just so unfortunate because Tyrese Maxey took over, and yeah, every time they switched one of their bigs onto them, it was just barbecue chicken. And almost forgot to mention Joel Embiid. You know what a revival we've seen from him, right? I mean, like, missed most of the season, I believe, due to injuries, and missed a lot of last season to injuries. So there was a lot of uncertainty about how he would do in these playoffs, especially being against the Celtics, who he's 0 for 3 in his career in the playoffs. But you got to give credit to him. He looked incredible in those games. Like, the Celtics just could not find someone who could guard him and get stops on him consistently. And for the Celtics, like that's never been a problem for them. Of course, I think they know it's hard to completely shut down a big like Embiid, but slowing him down has always been the answer, and that's how they've been able to find a way to win some of those playoff series in the past against the Sixers. But uh, different result this year. Joel Embiid just completely took over in Game Seven and even Game Five, that the series, the game that they got sent back to Philly for Game Six. So yeah, the Sixers just those last three games, they really showed their depth and their resilience, and they just showed how badly they really wanted to win this playoff series.
Yeah, and with Embiid, he was in and out of the lineup. He missed for first few games. Do you think it was hard for them to adjust, with Joel Embiid because Maxi, he's one of the most dominant players right now, and with
I,
him and Embiid.
I think so. You know, there were reports coming out that Embiid could probably miss the first round. So when I got that notification that he'd be coming back, I was a bit surprised. So yeah, um, stuff like that obviously takes a lot of adjustment. You got to build a new different game plan. And games 3 and 4, I thought no, I think he started playing it in game 4, excuse me. Game 4, they had a really good game against the Sixers. They blew them out at home. They blew them out in Philly. Um, Peyton Pritchard went off that game. Yeah, it takes a lot of adjustment. Obviously, that was just one game. We saw what happened the last 3 games of the series. Um, he was a big difference maker for the Sixers in those last, closing out the series against the Celtics. So, yeah, I would imagine that took a lot of. I'm sure there was a lot of adjusting, and that those adjustments didn't work because
Mhm.
Philadelphia just took complete advantage of the Celtics in the paint, with their bigs.
Yeah, and Jalen Brown, it sounded like he was really upset in his live stream. I don't know if you saw that. He was
Yeah,
criticizing the refs, and he was fined $50,000. So, like, what do you think about that?
yeah. Look, I understand why he's upset. You know, um, Embiid, there was a lot of iffy calls, but that's the benefit that you have if you're a superstar in this league. I mean, I don't know why he's been surprised by the fact that Embiid has always been getting those whistles. But the fact that the matter is that Jalen Brown was just he wasn't really the same player in this series as he was in the regular season. There was a lot of games where he really struggled to shoot the basketball well. Um, Obviously, I wanted more out of him because with Jason Tatum coming back, I didn't expect I didn't expect Tatum to be like the number one. With Brown and Tatum, it's always been in my opinion, it's always been a 1A, 1B kind of thing. They're both good enough to become first options on any other team, but the fact that they're on the same team together, it's like they have to, they found a way to coexist and dominate together. But you know, um, in this circumstance, I thought Jalen Brown would take over in this series. I thought he would find a way to just be their best player because they needed Jason Tatum needed that pressure off of him because he just came off a torn Achilles, came back in March, and he's been playing very exceptional. But my hope was that Jaylen Brown would just take over for the Celtics, lead them to a first round victory, and he struggled in a lot of those games, and with Jason, just watching Jason Tatum being the best player in my opinion for the Celtics in this playoff run was quite concerning. So yeah, a very I understand why he's upset, but I don't know if that was the way of expressing it.
Yeah, the Sixers, they came in as a seventh seed and they had to play in the play-in. And honestly, like I think that the Celtics, they are really good. They had a slow start in the beginning of the season. I can remember it was like they were like at 500 at one point, like losing record to start off. But then they really came on a roll with it, and they looked dominant like the against the Clippers both times. They always shoot the ball really well against the Clippers, of course. And Jaylen Brown, he had a ton of points when he came here, but yeah, it
I
was
think he had a 50 bomb.
yeah, it was a really good series. But yeah, do you think that I saw that Nikola Vucevic he didn't play Game 7, so do you think like any players have to move on from the Celtics, or do they have to move on from?
Well, it's going to be an interesting offseason. I have no idea what Brad Stevens in the front office has, what they have up their sleeves, but I'm really intrigued to see what kind of moves they make. As for players that I think should be gone. I mean, obviously Vucevic being one of them. That trade with Chicago did not really pan out. I think it's obvious that they should have kept Anthony Simons, who was playing exceptional for them prior to him getting traded. He definitely could have been a use in that Philadelphia series with the way how the Sixers were utilizing their guard plays. I think he could have matched up really well against them, but. Yeah, they went with Vucevic and it didn't work out. I saw him play the first couple of games and then racked up a DMP in game 7. So as for anybody that I think the Celtics should move on from, honestly, I don't know. I think Vucevic being one of them for sure. I think this is his last year of his contract, so I definitely most likely will walk. I'm really interested to see what they'll do with Derek White. I love me some Derek White ever since he's been a member since 2022, but I can officially say that this was his worst season as a member of the Celtics. Now, his defense was still really felt, he was still a really big factor on defense, but his offensive gameplay took a noticeable downgrade from seasons past. His shooting slumps got really worse. And we really saw in that Sixers series, the Sixers gave him a lot of open looks. They were not respecting his jumper, and those open looks he had, he took them and he missed them. And when he was finally starting to wake up in Game 7, it was already too late. So I'm really interested to see what they do with Derek White. I don't know if he'll be gone. I don't know if they'll keep him. I don't know if they'll give him another chance, but. If they do decide to trade Derek White, I'm really interested to see what kind of package they'll have for him because he's still a very good player. He will make an impact for any playoff team. But just complete shock by just his offensive downgrade from this season. Even when they were winning games, and yeah, he was still not the same player. So I'm not sure. Yeah, Derek White is a big maybe. Uh, sure, I definitely could see some of their players from championship runs be traded away. Maybe Sam Hauser's gone. I don't know. But really interesting offseason for Brad Stevens and the Celtics. I want to see how they'll find a way to retool for next season.
All right, thank you, Carlos, for the Celtics breakdown. And now let's transfer to the next series. The other 3-1 comeback to the
Hmm.
Magic and the Pistons. So it was crazy. In Game 6, I believe the Magic, they couldn't score in real time for 45 minutes. That was really crazy. And you know, like what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it was it was hard basketball to watch. It was definitely hard basketball to watch. 45 minutes of no points is unacceptable. And looking back on it now, that's why the Magic had to move on from Jamal Mosley. And look, you got to give credit to the Orlando Magic for pushing themselves, for being up 3-1 against the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. It looked like they really had it, but wow. I mean, 45 minutes of just scoreless basketball. I think that's unacceptable. And, you know, in that game, I believe that was game six. If you're talking about, they were up 60-38 at halftime, and the final score was 93-79. So just 14 points in the
Yeah,
second half is completely unacceptable. Um, Obviously, you wanted more from their leading scorers, right? Like Franz Wagner missed a lot of that series due to injury. You expected Banchero and Desmond Bain to try and close it out for them. That didn't happen. A lot of question marks are now around that team, wondering, if they make the right move to trade five future picks for Desmond Bain. So yeah, it was definitely tough basketball to watch. You just wonder now, what will the Magic do next to try and improve around their core, and what coach will they hire to help fix their offensive woes, to never let that happen again, right?
yeah, like the Magic, they're a really good team when healthy. Like I know Franz Wagner, he was out for a lot of the year. I had him in fantasy, and he pretty much stole my team. But yeah, it was crazy. Like I'm seeing here, like in the stats, like 19 points in the second half for the Magic, which is really crazy. Only 8
Yeah.
points in the fourth quarter. They got outscored 31-8. Like it was really crazy, and you know, and
Yeah.
then in Game 7, the Pistons, they pretty much just took care of business. And then yeah, but I think it was a really good series. With Wagner out, they credit to them, but I don't know if they should fire their coach. Like it's a business, but yeah, it's really crazy.
Well, there was a lot of reports coming out that they would have fired him no matter what, right? So I
Yeah,
think we have to take that as a solid grain. But now the Magic need to find a guy that could help, like I said, help fix their offensive blows. Because some of these guys coming into the league, like you look at Paolo Banchero, and don't get me wrong, Banchero had a great series against the Pistons, especially in that game seven, that closeout game where they lost. He had 38 points. Um, you know, Now they need to find a guy that could, maximize some of these guys' potentials, right? Like with Banchero coming out of Duke, offensive machine, and we haven't really seen how good he can really be for Orlando. And same thing with Franz Wagner. Although Wagner, in my opinion, last year when they played the Celtics in the playoffs, I thought he was their best player, hardest to guard. Excuse me. I just thought I would be seeing more, some of these guys' potential more offensively. But if there's one thing that Jamal Mosley did really well with this Orlando Magic squad, is that he made them tough. He made them tough defensively, always being a top five NBA defensive team in the league, always having a really good defensive rating. Um, he made them tough to get by, but where he gifted the Magic in that great defense, he also cursed them with having a putrid offense, and it showed in those last three games, blowing that 3-1 series lead to Detroit. So now the Magic need to go out there and find a guy that could help, improve their offense, because they have the potential to be a really good offensive team, but uh, under Mosley, they just could not, find a consistent rhythm on offense, and that's what led to them losing.
Yeah, it was really crazy, you know. But yeah, thank you for that too. And and then we'll talk about the biggest blowout, one of the biggest blowouts in playoff history, especially in the first half. The Knicks and the Hawks, like it was really crazy. I was at work, and after like the first hour of my shift, I was like, is this score right? Like, it was really crazy. Like, it was a halftime score. It was 83-36, which is the biggest blowout at halftime in playoff history. And they were, what's his name, Dyson Daniels and Mitchell Robinson. They were going at it, and they got ejected. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. I did not watch. I was able to watch part of that game six. I was actually out at dinner. I was out for a wedding in Arizona, and I had my phone like on the side of my pocket, just like checking the scores. And I looked at the score, the game six score for Atlanta, New York, and I thought my phone was bugging, so like I had to refresh it like two times just to make sure that it was the right score, and I could not believe it. And I did see that scuffle with Mitchell Robinson and Dyson Daniels.
yeah, they
Yeah,
were just going at it. Daniel Teal, he was probably frustrated. He had to get his anger out somehow, right?
yeah, a frustrating end to the season for the Hawks. That's not the way how you want to end the season to what has been a really surprising season for them. A lot of people
Yeah,
did not have the Hawks making the playoffs, and they made it, but they made it, from unforeseen circumstances, trading away Trey Young, their franchise star, to Washington for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert, and they had a really nice turnaround to their season. We saw how good Jalen Johnson was for this team, making his first career All Star game, um, to kill Alexander Walker, playing some of the best basketball of his career, and some of their other standouts like Onyeka Kongwu and yeah, again Jalen Johnson, being that 1-2, and even Nah joining in at number three, being their best three players. They had a solid supporting cast, and you know what? Before that game six, they really pushed New York. Taking it all the way to game six. They were up 2-1 on the series. Obviously, New York waking up and responding to the call, but that was just a really shocking ending to me. I thought that series would for sure go to seven with the way how the Hawks were playing. And again, great season for them. It's not the way how you want to end the season, obviously. Um, yeah, just very, very deflating for Atlanta and really good for New York because you see how, they've started off in their second round series against Philly, being up 2-0. Um, for Atlanta now, it's all about, there's questions around them now. You know, do they want to trade for a superstar? Um, Obviously, the market's going to be pretty interesting this summer with Giannis being there and Kevin Durant probably playing his last game as a member of the Rockets. So, now the question is with Atlanta, like, do you trade away some of your resources that help got to where you are now, or do you just keep it and see where you go next season? Because they could be a good team next season and retool, with free agency. But there lies the big question right there. Like, does Atlanta pull the trigger and try and go after, one of these big names like Giannis or KD?
yeah, exactly. Like, and especially like the Hawks too. Like CJ McCollum, he has been having a good season, and like especially started out with the Wizards, I believe. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, he was in a Trey Young trade, right? I'm not wrong, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then playoff series, it was against the Hawks, and the last time they played the Hawks in the playoffs, they had beef with Trey Young, the Knicks, and they were pretty much treating CJ just like just like Trey Young, just chanting Trey Young and stuff, and but yeah, Jalen Johnson, like you said, it was a really good, yeah, a really good season. His first All Star appearance, it was cool to see him at All Star Weekend, and they also had the most improved player for this season, Nikhil Alexander Walker. It was just a really, it was just a really good series, and they were just up there. Like nobody was talking about the Hawks like being up there after. after the trade, just like blowing it up pretty much. But they were still up there. They would just be up there, especially when at the end of a regular season when there was a lot of teams close to each other for like the 4 through 10 spot. They were able to survive that. It was
Yeah,
yeah.
they they surprised a lot of people. They definitely surprised a lot of people. They surprised me. I thought they were going to be a playing team, especially at the start of the season where things were looking pretty bleak. And then, once they traded away Trey Young, it turned out, that was the best thing they could have done. They went on a big run and they turned around their season. They got in the playoffs, not through the play-in this time as the number 6 seed. And, I would say they were a very respectable 6 seed, if you call it. Yeah, they were tough. They're definitely a tough team. And now again, lies the question now, like, do you trade for a superstar? You see what you got, they could probably carry that over into next season. But obviously, you play to win a championship. So now for the Hawks, do you take that big jump and try and get one of those stars that could help you get over the hump, right? But again, it takes so much sacrifice and you have to give up so many pieces that you probably don't want to give up. So it's just a lot of questions for Atlanta, but I trust their front office with the way how they've constructed their team. I'm really curious to see what they'll do to retool to help them become a contender in the East.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just looking right now. Like it looks like that they have a lottery pick here. They
They
even
do.
have they will have the Pelicans pick. It looks like so they pretty much have a seventh highest odds to win, pretty much.
Yeah,
To
this could be a
lottery.
really this
Yeah,
could be a really good offseason for Atlanta. If that pick turns out to become really well, who knows in this new draft system or in this new draft lottery, who knows? But I'm really, if the pick ends up being really good for them, I'm curious to see like, okay, are they going to use this? Are they going to use this draft pick, or are they going to trade away this draft pick for a superstar? So this should be a good offseason for Atlanta. We're going to see what happens this upcoming summer.
yeah, exactly. And speaking of the new lottery system, like, what do you think about this new lottery system? It'll start next year if the governors say yes to this. What do you think about that?
Um, I'm not sure if I like it honestly. Uh, I always thought, with how the draft lottery is right now, I don't think it's really giving some of these teams who have been struggling over the years a fair chance, to try and properly rebuild. I think this is definitely going to be interesting, but I'm not sure if this is going to help some of the teams who just, you know, don't intentionally tank, but they just genuinely are not that good. I don't think it's not going to help them. You want to see some of these teams get over the hump. Like, we've seen the Washington Wizards be at the bottom of the Eastern Conference for the last couple of years. We've seen the Utah Jazz struggle uh, without Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. We've seen the New Orleans Pelicans, really just struggle with injuries and just aren't consistently good when they should be good. A high pick would really help them. A high draft pick would really help them. So, I'm not sure if this is going to help some of the teams that just are genuinely, in the gutter, right? But yeah, we'll see what happens next season. Um, I'm not really fond of it. I always, for example, I've always liked how the NFL draft has worked. Switching gears real quick, like they always give the worst team the number one pick. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if this is going to be fair for just some of the teams who are trying to rebuild out of the situation they're in, and they just get a not so good pick when like the record shows, like okay, like maybe they should be getting this low of a pick. If you're an 18-win team, getting the number 6 pick is not ideal. Seeing a team that has won more games than you, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, so a lot of questions are going to be raised. A lot of, it's going to open a lot of eyes. Um, yeah, I'm really curious to see how it's going to work next season. So, yeah.
Yeah, the Pistons and or not the Pistons, the Cavaliers and the Raptors, they went to Game 7, and James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, they looked really good in the series. Well, Donovan Mitchell, his numbers went down a little bit. He was even talking about his free throws a little bit, he didn't get as much as he usually got, and he said like, "Oh, maybe I have to start flopping a little more." But the series. What do you think about that? They were really good.
Yeah, it was a back and forth series. All the home teams won the playoff games, right? Cavs won four at Cleveland, the Raptors won three in Toronto. Um, Really surprising series in my opinion because I thought that would end in 5 games. I thought the Cavs would take care of business. But you got to give credit to the Raptors. Young team. They haven't made the playoffs in about 4 years now. Scotty Barnes played really well throughout the series. They had their moments. They definitely had a lot of people surprised by how good they were actually were. I think a lot of people had the Cavs winning in 5 games, six. I saw some sweeping them, but Toronto's a tough, gritty team. They made the Cavs work in all their playoff games. Defensively, they were hounds. I'm a little disappointed in Cleveland. I thought they would take care of them a lot sooner as well. But took them 7 games to put the Raptors away, and that was a really tough game 7, especially for that first half. But they woke up again. Like you said, James Harden, Donovan Mitchell took care of business. Uh, Mitchell's numbers I did see a notable decrease in the statistics, but overall, like they still did what they had to do, and now um, they're they're in their second round matchup against Detroit, and that's obviously, this was tough for them. Then playing the number one seed in the Detroit Pistons is going to definitely be, quite an obstacle. Um, but I'm just a little disappointed. I thought the Cavs would finish this quicker. I think everybody knows how good they can be, but that series against Toronto, they just, again, it took them a game 7 to put them away. A Toronto team, again, that hasn't made the playoffs in 4 years, and they have their woes, right? Like the Raptors, they have a lot of improvements to do this off season. But if you're the Cavs, you're an experienced team. You should be the better team. You should be the team that has all the advantages. You should be able to put them a lot sooner, but they didn't. They had to go to game 7 to put them away. And, that game 6, they could have won that game if RJ Barrett didn't hit that crazy shot where it hit the rim, went all the way high in the sky, and it dropped down.
Yeah, exactly.
That was like another Kawhi Leonard, right? Or even Tyrese Halliburton in the Eastern
Yeah,
Conference Finals last season against New
yeah,
York. So,
yeah. He even
uh,
he even tweeted that like, "Oh, that looked familiar." Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
yeah, it was a crazy shot, but Cleveland, they I thought they should have taken care of this series a lot quicker. But now they're in this hole with Detroit, so we'll see how they do today. Game 2 happening over in Detroit. I'm curious to see what they're going to do to try and respond before they head back to Cleveland for the next 2 games of the series.
yeah. There we go. And now we'll transition to round 2 of the playoffs. Four great matchups going on right now, and yeah, like you said, we could start off with the Pistons and the Cavaliers right now. They won by 10. The Pistons. It was a really good game, and Harden he had 22 with 8 and 7, and Mitchell with 23. But yeah, Kate Cunningham, leading scorer with 23. You know, I think the Pistons, I would say like in 5 or 6 games, they will win. The
I
Pistons.
think the Pistons definitely have the edge in this
Yeah,
series. I think they're just physically like stronger and mentally tougher than Cleveland. Um, Now you can't count out the Cavs, right? Like they still have Donovan Mitchell who will by any means, try and get them in a playoff series, right? James Harden. They have the Cavs have the depth to make this a good series, but we've seen how Cleveland has done in these last couple of playoffs. In rounds they should be winning, but you know, uh, look at last season, number one seed in the Eastern Conference, and they got uh, they got a gentleman sweep by they got gentleman swept by the Pacers in 5 games. In that first year when Donovan Mitchell's first year with the Cavs, they lost to the Knicks in the playoff series that they also probably should have won. Who knows how far they could have gotten that year? Because the next round they would have been playing the Miami Heat, the number 8 seed. But uh, going back to today or going back to now, Yeah, I think the Pistons have the edge. You know, they're physically tough. They're physically stronger, right? We saw them come back down 3-1 to their Orlando Magic. So really, if Detroit could get through that, then they could get through. They could probably get through Cleveland. You know, we've seen the Cavs big shrink under the light, like Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley. Now they have to go up against Jalen Duren, who didn't have a good series against the Magic, but is more than capable of turning things around because you got to believe in him, right? Like he was the one of the best rebounders in the league, and they just have so much toughness around them, right? You have a lot of gritty players that will get down for you. You know, defensively they are strong. Uh, I would be fine. If I was a Pistons fan, I'd be feeling really good because you have guys like Cade Cunningham, best player on the team, right? But they have a bunch of dogs, if you want to call it, surrounding them. You have guys like Asor Thompson, defensive defensive mastermind, lockdown player. Um, they have nice veterans, like Tobias Harris and Duncan Robinson, who has been their best shooter. And yeah, uh, they're really good team. So for Cleveland, if they're gonna want to beat this team, then they're gonna have to try and just be as tough as this Detroit team. And honestly, Mario, I'm not sure if they can do that. Um, I'm with you. I think the Pistons will win the series, but I think they'll do it in 6 games.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good series, and just like the other Eastern Conference matchup too, the Sixers and the Knicks, and Embiid didn't play in Game 2. He had that injury scare in Game 7. When Jalen Brown he hit a move on questionable push off maybe. Who knows? They didn't call it, but then Maxi fell on his knee, and yeah, and that probably what led him to not playing Game 2. But it's a really good matchup. In Game 1, the Knicks they won by almost 40 points, by 39 points, and then it was a closer game without Embiid. In Game 2, they won by 6. So what do you think about this matchup? This might be a better series, or more competitive series than the other matchup in the
Yeah, definitely very, very tough for Philadelphia. They just got out of that 3-1 hole against the Celtics. And, if that was tough for them, then now they have to go against a team who's looking very hot right now in the Knicks. They've won 5 straight games in a row, dating back to that series against Atlanta. Yeah, like I said, if Embiid is not playing in the series, then I think the Sixers have no chance of maybe even winning a game. But again, can't doubt this Philadelphia team. They won a playoff game without Embiid before, so maybe they can probably snatch one away from them at home. But obviously, I think the Knicks are the better team. They are the stronger team, and they're a lot tougher than Boston. So I think the Knicks should probably take care of them in, I'd say, 5 games.
Yeah, I think so too. But this came out 20 minutes ago, literally from Shams Charania, that OG Anunoby has a hamstring strain.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and he's day to day now, so he could possibly miss tomorrow's Game 3, which is crazy.
Well, if he misses that game, that's gonna be huge for New York. The Sixers might have the edge. The Sixers could probably find a way to exploit, that. I still believe in the Knicks. I still trust them. I still think they can win the series, even with OG Anunoby's injury. It's gonna affect New York, um, and how they play without him because he's still a big piece of how good they've been, how good they have been the last couple of seasons. So yeah, Philadelphia could find a way to exploit that, but I still trust the New York Knicks to win this series.
So now we'll move on to the Western Conference Series. The Lakers, they were up 3-0 against the Rockets, and then they blew 2 games, and then now they have to play against OKC. Probably the biggest challenge that you have to get through. to win a championship here.
Yeah.
OKC, they're just really, really good. You know, Clipper legend Shea, being the face of the league right now. But do you think the Lakers have any competition with the Lakers without Luca?
Well, we saw in game one, like LeBron James at 41 years old had to carry the load as if he were back in Cleveland, his last year there. Um, Look, the Lakers, if they want to have any shot of trying and beating this Oklahoma City team, they're going to need Luka Doncic to come back out there. By far the number one option on that team. And this is really the first time in LeBron James' career where he's not the number one option. Like Luka Doncic has been by far that guy that the Lakers need, when LeBron James inevitably retires. But against this Oklahoma City team, it's going to be really, really hard to match up against them and try and play perfect because this OKC team defensively will disrupt anything that the Lakers could have been playing. I mean, we've seen it, we've seen how good defensively they are. You see their guards guarding whoever is dribbling, whoever's bringing the ball up top, like all the way out in the perimeter, not allowing them to drive and pretty much daring them to take threes. Um, so they're going to need Luka Doncic, who is a disruptive playmaker who will create problems for Oklahoma City, as we saw, in 2024 when the Mavs matched up with OKC really well. So yeah, they're going to need Luka to come back, but with what we're seeing right now, it's really looking like he might not come back in this series.
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna need a bunch of your role players to step up like they did in Houston. But even then, um, it might not be enough to stop this Oklahoma City team who is just super, super good. Like last season, NBA champs, we saw how good they were all throughout the playoffs, all throughout the regular season. Uh, yeah, this season, no difference except, the Thunder are missing their second best player in Jalen Williams, who's missed all but 2 games in this postseason due to injury. So, yeah, it's very scary to see how good this OKC team is without their second best player. You're getting a lot of guys that can step up, to replace the production he put up. You're seeing guys like Jared McCain, who, can score the basketball really well. You're seeing guys like AJ Mitchell, who, you know, had a really good game one against the Lakers. Case and Wallace, right? Um, they have so much depth at their guards, with the MVP leading the way. And then, with the bigs, you have a very nice 1-2 punch of Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. And, I saw Jalen Williams come off the bench and give them really good minutes. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very tough for the Lakers to try and match how good this Oklahoma City team is. Um, Even when Luca does come back, I'm not sure if that's really going to change anything. Um, um, you know, they could probably win a game, maybe a game or two. You still can't count out this Lakers team, but the Thunder just by far better, in my opinion, better than everybody else in the West and probably the East. So yeah, I just don't know if the Lakers I don't know if the Lakers hold a candle to what Oklahoma City has right now. So obviously Thunder are going to win this series, but I'm curious to see how the Lakers are going to respond, to that game one loss because they were in it. They did keep it pretty close, but then Oklahoma City doing their thing, pulling away and just being the better team. So yeah, I don't know if the Lakers could keep up, but I think they could try and maybe get a game off or two, but it still won't matter. The Thunder most likely going to the Western Conference Finals, when the series is all done.
Yeah, exactly. And the Lakers, they're dealing with another injury too. Jared Vanderbilt, he dislocated his finger. He's out
Yeah,
for today's game.
that was a tough injury to watch.
Yeah,
I believe his bone went through his pinky finger. That was just very disturbing.
yeah, and
Uh, he was, offensively, we all know like he's not a strong offensive player, but defensively he does great problems to the other team. So yeah, it's gonna be tougher to going probably. We'll see what more reports say, but uh, yeah, it's going to be tough for him to just manage to play through that injury if he does play through it. But a broken pinky finger, that is tough nails for them, especially if that's been one of their best defensive players. He just went down, and now, yeah, they're gonna need to find a way how to adjust without him.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll end up the episode with the last playoff series in the second round, the Timberwolves and the Spurs. The Timberwolves, they had Anthony Edwards and Dante DiVincenzo go down in the first round, and then Anthony Edwards, he came back in the first game, after pretty much bending his knee backwards, and
Hmm.
it was it was a really good first game for the Timberwolves. They held Wembanyama to just 11 points on 5 or 17 shooting and missing all 8 of his threes. But still, he had a triple double with blocks, which is really crazy, which is one of the, in at least recent years, one of the most blocks in playoff history. And, but still, and then they just took care of business with Spurs in game two, winning by almost 40 or 20, yeah, 40 points also, by 38. So what do you think about this series?
I think this is a very intriguing series. You have two teams who have a really good case of making the Western Conference Finals. Starting off with Minnesota, I believe they are the most underappreciated team in basketball right now. Going into the postseason, not a lot of people gave them a chance of making it out of the first round. Going up against Denver, not a lot of people thought that they could make a run. They could make a good playoff run, but if there's anything we've seen from the Wolves the last two postseasons, excuse me, is that they have been underestimated. Um, we saw it in 2024, their first two rounds against uh, Phoenix and Denver. Not a lot of people thought they would go down in 4 or 5 games. They ended up beating both of them, made the Western Conference Finals. We saw it last year when they played the Lakers in the first round. A lot of people, most of the experts had the Lakers beating them in 5 games, and they upset them, and it was a reverse. The Wolves beat them in five, but right now it's not looking like any different than the last two postseason runs. Last round against Denver, a lot of the experts had the Nuggets winning, but the Wolves are just a really, I said they're a lot of people are underestimating them, but they're a really weird team because they have the defense of a team. Their defensive rating is on the level of an Oklahoma City, of a Detroit. They're just so good defensively. They can disrupt anything, right? We saw how they disrupted Denver's offense in their last round, right? Jamal Murray's 3-point shooting went down horrifically. They had a bunch of bodies around him. You had Gobert and Nas Reed slowing him down, and Gobert does get a lot of does get the benefit of a doubt from a lot of the experts, but you got to give him credit. He is a really good rim protector, and he really slowed down the Denver Nuggets off. Slowed down Jokic, excuse me, but in my opinion, the difference maker of their whole postseason run has been Jaden McDaniels, who has just been phenomenal for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He really set the tone when after game two, I believe he said, go after the Nuggets defenders, go after Jokic, go after Murray, go after Cam Johnson or Aaron Gordon. And he set the tone. He helped build that toughness for Minnesota. And even when Edwards went down with injury, even when DiVincenzo went down with injury, even when Nas Reed went down with injury, I believe he tweaked his ankle, I believe. They still won that series, and they won it because of their toughness. So going into this series, that game one win was very close, and they could have lost that game. They were a Julian. I don't know if you saw that game, but the Spurs were literally a Julian Champagny 3-point away from winning that game. That was a good look from Champagny. I don't know if you saw that shot. Like he had definitely a good
Yeah,
look, just missed it. But this is a lot different than Denver because San Antonio is also like they are also really really good. Obviously Victor Wembanyama, even when he does struggle to score. the basketball, he is still impactful in every other way. I mean, he's 7 foot 4. Like he's a defense his impact on the defense is really, really, really strong. Even when he's not scoring the basketball, like he had a triple double with rebounds and blocks, and um, they took care of business in game 2. But really, this is a very intriguing series because honestly, I think both teams have a strong case of winning this series. But ultimately, what's going to come down to is consistency on the offensive end. And in my opinion, I think the Spurs do have that edge right now. The Minnesota Timberwolves are really weird their offense is really weird. It's not bad by any means, but it's not has not accumulated to championship style offenses. Like they made the Western Conference Finals the last 2 years, and they've gotten beaten pretty bad by OKC and Dallas, who has disrupted their defense. Right, like if their defense is not going to do the work, if their defense breaks down, then they're going to have to rely on their offense, and we've seen that their offense, you know. Could be better. They need work offensively, but I think San Antonio might have the edge in this series. They are really, really well balanced defensively, offensively. I'm just kind of curious to see how Minnesota. Again, you can't count out the Wolves. You cannot count them out. Um, I think they have a really good chance of being San Antonio in this series, but ultimately it's going to come down to offensive consistency. And right now, I'm leaning a bit towards the Spurs. I can't count out the Wolves, so I think this one's really up in the air right now. You could pick whoever you want to pick on who's going to win the series, and I think, yeah, I think it could be fair. So but if we're doing it based on what I think the Spurs could win this in 7. I think ultimately Minnesota's offense could be the reason why they lose, and you know, they've been playing really well, right? They've been playing really well with what they have right now. With their circumstances, I think they would have been a bit better offensively if maybe Dante DiVincenzo was healthy. If he hadn't torn his Achilles, which is really, really tragic to see. Um, I think the Spurs have a bit of the edge, but you cannot count out the Minnesota Timberwolves. If there's one thing I've learned from this postseason so far is that you cannot count out the grittiness, and how tough Minnesota is. So yeah, I think it could go either way, but based on my prediction, I think the Spurs could could have the edge if their offense is just consistent. But if not, then you could probably just give this one to Minnesota, who again, there will be a tough 7 game series, but Minnesota, they've been in this spot before. They've been underestimated. This whole postseason run, the last 3 postseason runs, they've been underestimated. So you cannot count on this Minnesota Timberwolves team. But I just think the Spurs have the bit of the edge right now. And again, you could look back on this. I could be wrong, but yeah, it should be a fun series. I'm really looking forward to the next 2 games in Minnesota to see what goes down.
Yeah. Well, that's all the time we have for today. And thank you guys. If you guys have been listening to Fast Radio Tundra Waller this entire year, thank you guys. This is the last episode of the school year. It will come out on Saturday, May 9th. And Carlos, thank you for coming on here. I really appreciate it. You said you wanted to come on, and I thought it was a really good idea too, because we're both journalism students at our schools. He's talking all the way from Oregon, guys. So shout out to him. And anything you like to say before we head off?
Yeah, really appreciate you for having me on the show. I really admire the work that you put in throughout this year with your podcast, with your episodes. Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, I'm really proud of the work you put in. I can't wait to see more content you'll put out in the future. And I'm really, again, it's just been really a blast on the show. I'm looking forward to doing more of this. I'm hoping to put a show of my own this summer. Just doing more work in the industry, and again, guys, like again, if you guys want to check me out, my Instagram handle is Carlos Z Media on Instagram. Um, Looking to put out more content, more studio content, more sports content, more of that kind of stuff. So again, could be starting my own show this summer. And yeah, I really appreciate you for having me, and thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate all of your work too. You have a lot of great stories on your Instagram too, and we're I'm pretty much in the process of trying to put all my episodes from last semester and this semester putting on YouTube. So hopefully everything works out, and if everything goes according to plan, then I'll continue Fast Break Tundra Baller during the summer. Put it out every week. So pretty much with this episode, this semester, pretty much been doing 13 straight weeks of you know of whatever has been happening in the basketball world. So make sure you guys check out my other stuff. Tundra underscore baller underscore zero. That is me on all socials. I pretty much post on Instagram and TikTok, and and pretty much like a lot of breakdowns about the Clippers too. And Instagram pretty much is like stuff I have, you know, stuff in life pretty much. And I will be off next week, but to focus on finals because it is going to be a really busy week. But hopefully the week after I will be back. I will be here on YouTube, hopefully. But I'll definitely plan on being back on Time Radio. So that's pretty much all for us, guys. And yeah, and hopefully I'll see you guys on YouTube in 2 weeks. All right, anything you'd like to say before we head off?
That's all, folks.
All right, I'll see you guys and hopefully see you guys in 2 weeks and next semester on Time Radio.